We just had an event in Iowa City here yesterday and the day before, World Cup of Wrestling. And I know a few people have been down there. It was a pretty good event. It was kind of a different kind of event, actually. Got to root for a lot of people we probably rooted against before at one time or another, but it was a USA team, so it worked well, and I think it was a tremendous opportunity to have a really good show for our sport. Besides the Cresco Hall of Fame here, there's a museum in Waterloo, and Mike Doty, he's here somewhere. Mike, I'm not sure where he's at, but way in the back, he's the developmental guy for that, and he's here. And he's learning something because he's came to another museum today, so that's pretty good. Kyle Clayman's the executive director. I believe he's here as well. And actually from USA Wrestling, we have Mike Clayton. And where are you at, Mike? Somewhere back there. He's way in the back too. So he stayed overnight, originally from Iowa, but works for the number one team in the world right now, the national governing body, USA Wrestling out of Colorado Springs. So he's here, and he wanted to stay another day, and he canceled his flight to stay in Cresco, Iowa. So that's pretty cool, I thought. And he'll go back and he'll show that organization a thing or two after tonight. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, Cresco, Iowa, that means a lot to me forever. Still looking for those signs on the edge of town. No, that really did it. In fact, you guys went overboard. But I don't know if you've been following the newspaper, not newspaper, but the TV shows, that they're actually highlighting a lot of towns in Iowa right now. And so I think you got to be proud of what you do, and you got to show it off. And we love wrestling in our state, and we don't want to have any town in the state that doesn't show that we had an opportunity to broadcast our sport. So anyway, somebody said something about 2 miles or something, you got let off. 2 miles, come on. What about when I kicked out the team at 9 Mile Point, and then they won their 9th national title that year. But anyway, I'm just trying to up the level here. This is about Lennie here, Lennie Zalesky. Yeah. Zalesky. That's the way you say it. Yeah. But you've been gone long enough, and you might not even know how to pronounce it. I know that. This is the whole table here, just about. And it's Shoeyville, Iowa. Is that correct? Anybody know where Shoeyville is? Well, that's good. Because when I recruited him, I tell you, it was amazing. It was amazing. I'm not sure if you had that upper bedroom, and you guys looked out over the, I think you looked out over the garage. And you had, I'm not sure how many beds you had, but you had a lot of kids in that one bed. All of them. So there's quite a few. How many kids are there? 7 kids in one bed. That's unbelievable. It was a big bed. It was a double bed. Good size. Learned a lot about life quickly. But it was a great opportunity, and they've really helped build a dynasty at the University of Iowa between the brothers and the family. It meant a lot. Unbelievable. Lennie, Jimmy, Larry. I think Larry's here. He's over there. So, you know, it's unbelievable. At one time, Prairie High School, that's where they went. I think one time, and they were all probably on the team at the time, we had 8 kids from Prairie High School on the Iowa University wrestling team. So, it's pretty amazing. Anyway, he's been all over. I mean, he just, he didn't stay at Shoeyville, even though he comes back. I mean, he went to, he stayed as an assistant coach, and then he went to Alaska. I'm not really sure why he went to Alaska, but the weather. But he had a really good wrestling program up there in Palmer, Alaska, and I think I actually saw you up there one time. Yeah. And did a great job up there, and then I think he left there and went to maybe Indiana, and at the University of Indiana, and then you went to Culver, it's a private school up there, and then he went to California and had a great program. I'll tell you what's the problem, you know, everybody isn't like Iowa in terms of wrestling. Even though they got 30,000 kids that wrestle in California, and he had the #1 program at the college, Cal Davis, is that right? UC Davis. There's still rules and regulations that people put in effect. I'm not so sure they're always the best rules, because they lost their best program just because of rules and regulations. And so he went from there to Cal Baptist, is that correct? And he just finished third or fourth? Third? This year? Wow. Third. He just finished third in the country at the Division II level. And actually, he's really moving our sport forward. He's going to take that program and moving it up to D1 in the future. So we're going to have another Division I program. Even though the sacrifice is crazy and the rule is crazy, and maybe we'll get a change so they can get in earlier. But he's doing a great job looking out for our sport as well. And his family has been, you know, an unbelievable family. They had a lot in common with me when I brought him in there, because his man's a fisherman too at the time. I think your dad was a pretty darn good fisherman. Yep. And so we had a lot of things in common. In fact, I even took him up to Lansing, Iowa a few times, I believe, fishing up there, but mostly to run the hills. He didn't know it though. I stuck with him up there. After he ran the hills and wrestled and pummeled and sat in the sauna, then I let him go fishing for a little while. He was too tired to fish, but he put a bobber out there, so it didn't matter. But anyway, so he's been all over, and he's in a great place, and he'll introduce, you know, all the people here. I mean, he's a smart guy. I mean, he knew more than we knew at the time when he was going through. This is back in the early 80s. His major, I don't know if his major was, but he learned Russian. It's pretty popular right now to know Russian, because it's all we talk about anymore, the Russians. And so that's pretty cool as well. But anyway, so it's been a real honor for me to be able to coach a guy that was a 3-time All-American, 2-time national finalist, and I'm a guy that doesn't like to bitch about calls. Because we got referees here. But there's 3 calls that in my career that have cost me, that I think, national championships. He was involved with one of them. So, you know, that's just the way it is. I mean, you can't be perfect. And so, you know, I don't have anything against the officials, except don't walk outside tonight. I'm looking for you. You're not here, though. Anyway, great wrestler, went on to wrestle internationally, won some international tournaments, right there close to making world and Olympic teams. Great guy. What's the number? 129? Wow, it's pretty crazy. 129. I bet there's some states that don't even have anybody that have any in the Hall of Fame in their state. But Lennie Zalesky, come on up here.
Thank you, Coach. Well, my Russian degree, I don't know if you remember, but because of this guy, when I was coaching with him, he allowed me to study Russian during lunch hour, and you get it, and the Hawkeye Club paid for it. So if I had to refund the money, I would. Well, listen, I'm an Iowan at heart. This California thing, I'm only a California resident. Keith Pullman already got me aside in the museum and gave me a 15-minute lecture on our politics out there. So, hey, I'm not part of that. But, hey, I thought when they said 8:15 that we're going to be tied, I didn't know they were talking about California. So, yeah, okay. But anyways, we're traveling here from California. My wife Maria asked me, we actually flew in and got to Des Moines, and she asked me, what do you think you would have done if you haven't wrestled? And I was about ready to say something, and I started thinking about it, thinking, gosh, there was nothing that I was really, teachers weren't, directing me towards anything academically. My passion was just really in wrestling. And so, I often thought this, about this sport of wrestling. If it wasn't for the sport, and really I think the state of Iowa. Every job I've worked, every degree I've gotten, any education, and probably 80% of my friends and acquaintances are all from really the result of wrestling. When I was a sophomore, I was a 98-pounder, and the 105-pounder, his name was Larry Woods. And he was my favorite workout partner. And during the meet, he hurt his elbow. And I was talking to him about it. He went over to his mother, and then he came back to me and goes, my mother's making me quit wrestling. And I said, quit wrestling? And then I went over to his mother, and I was pleading his case, why he should be staying out, that it could heal, and she kind of got a little stern with me, and she says, Lennie, after you graduate from high school, what are you going to do with wrestling? Now, I didn't have any answer for her at the time, but if I had a few moments with her today, 44 years later, never left the sport, I have a few answers for her. But, I'm not the typical guy that started with wrestling. I actually started out in basketball because of my great height. And my dad was a basketball player, and he had a hoop, and I tried in 7th grade, and I did make 2 points. But I was going to practice over the summer and become very good, and I was drilling, playing, sinking the ball and going out there and practicing. My dad decided to remodel the house that summer, and he took the hoop down. So about 2 months later, it was about a week before tryouts, he puts it back up, and I got the ball out again, and I just can't hit anything. And so about the next day, a friend of mine kind of convinced me to go out for wrestling. And, so I did, and I remember just going to practice and kind of rolling around this guy. And I didn't know if it was going to be any good, but I loved the sport immediately. And I remember that year walking around feeling really good, kind of like I found something that I really, really enjoy. And so I didn't even make the varsity 8th grade team, for that matter. Barry Davis's brother actually beat me out. But anyway, I often thought over the years, and the guys that have been up here have actually echoed the same sentiments as that. I can't imagine a better place to grow up and be a good wrestler. There's no place that I've seen, you travel, you work with other wrestlers in different states, and it's like these guys say, it's not like Iowa. So we had, we're just coming off, I think the state of Iowa was kind of coming off with Gable, he won the gold in 72. I actually went out, I think, in 75, but everybody's excited. I think that excites everybody. Iowa people feel like maybe they could be something like a Dan Gable. Our gyms were always filled. which is kind of hard to believe, as a coach in California, it's not always that way with high school matches. Iowa State matches, as I think Steve said, they were always on TV. They were great motivational things. There was just so much talent here in the state. We had this paper called The Predicament. It's still around. But I remember reading at a very young age, and what they used to do is they used to interview the state champions and from 98 to all the way to heavyweight, and ask them, what are some of the reasons that you succeeded in the sport of wrestling? And they would say. So I said, well, I'm just going to go through this and just see what common things they do, and they would kind of echo that, and kind of repeat that myself. So anyway, it's just, I look back, and I know I grew up in an area with a lot of talent. And it was just like a couple years ago, I got this Facebook picture, just kind of reminded me how much talent we had. So we would work out at our house. Little did I know I was going to have a 3-time NCAA champion as a workout partner. Larry, actually, over there, was actually you didn't hear him as much because he didn't make the lineup there at Iowa, but he was a great wrestler and a tough wrestler as well. But anyway, they sent, there was a Facebook picture. We went to Lisbon to work out, and if I remember right, I think we used to sneak in, Baxter left the back door open or something. I can't remember, but we just would go there and work out. And so they took a picture of that group, I think 15 guys. I think Scott, you're in it. But anyway, both of the Gibbons brothers are in it. I looked at it and I go, wow, about every one of these guys became a Division I All-American. And half of them were, or more than half, were in the NCAA finals. And the guys that did make it were awful good wrestlers, But anyway, that's what we grew up around. And anyway, even the community of Swisher and Shoeyville, I kind of noticed that all the state finalists for Prairie were all from the Shoeyville-Swisher region. And I think the commonality there was we all worked on farms. And I think the farmers were in on it. I think they were getting prepped for this. They would stick us in these barns at 105 degrees, give us a water jug, and say, the hay's coming, I'll see you in 8 hours. We lose about 10 pounds, and so we all had the warm temperature, we had the weight loss down. But anyway, I never, it was great to go on and win a state title. That was a great moment in my life. It was a great moment, of course. I mean, beyond expectations to go and wrestle at the University of Iowa, only 15 minutes from our home. But with all the things they had going on there, and they still do, but at the time it was such a kind of a relic. Of course, Coach Gable just took over as coach. We had Hawkeye Wrestling Club, which we had about, I think, Brad, you were wrestling there at the time. But we had about, Brad was a national champ, of course, most of you know, but there was probably another 9 guys like that in the room. We had Carver back in the program, and that certainly helped. We had these fans that were just multitude of fans and very supportive. So we had all these things going, and then just to go on to be a part of those teams that we won 9 NCAA titles in a row. I think that goes beyond any high school guy's imagination when he first begins wrestling, especially the basketball player ones. But anyway, we left Iowa in 1990, and I always had the desire to come back to this state. I'm very fond of this state and the people of this state. There's things I miss, of course. We grew up fishing and hunting and mushrooming, and I certainly miss that. As Riverside, California just doesn't have it. Gun laws are a little bit stiffer for some reason. But anyway, one thing that's really, and I don't know if, unless you moved out of this state, you would realize that everywhere I go, people talk about how great Iowa people are. So, they'll say something like, well, I passed through there, I spent a week there or two, but those are some of the most friendly people I've ever met. And so that keeps getting repeated. I was actually in southern Russia in a place called Kabardino-Balkaria, just west of Chechnya. And I was talking to the coach there, and he was kind of the coach of that area. And I guess was there a Russian team that came through here in 1995? He said they had a group of Russian guys, I think it might have been high school guys, maybe a little bit older, but they wrestled in here for about 2 weeks. And he told me, he says, Lennie, he says, I have been to 128 different countries, and I have never met better people than the people of Iowa. You guys give yourself a hand for that. And these people, at least in California, they live there, and economically, it's probably better in many situations, but there's this longing to kind of gather back to Iowa. And they have these gatherings. The first one we went to is in Northern California. There was 5,000 people from Iowa that gathered in this group, and they had an Iowa State stand over here, the Iowa stand, the UNI stand, but mostly everybody just kind of gathered, and talked about Iowa, where you're from, where you live. Near us, there was one we went to, and I think it was about just down in Southern California, about 5,000 people that went there. But they said, well, this is nothing. Years ago, it was up to 40,000 Iowans gathering in Southern California, basically just to talk Iowa. But listen, I want to thank a lot of people here because really, I think every wrestler would say, that their life is basically, there's people that were behind it at the beginning and that went out of their way. But, I'd first like to thank my parents, my late parents. They were kind of like Steve's parents as well. My dad, if I lost, it was a ref's fault. I guess he was right, though. My mom, she was just concerned, as long as I didn't get hurt. That was her concern. But anyway, they were great, drove us all around. They knew nothing about the sport, but was very supportive. I want to thank Coach Gable here for, recruiting me and my brother, mentoring us, taking us fishing, doing the things he did over the years. Every time I hear of, I get out to California and somebody will say, we just did a Gable workout. And I said, well, really, what is that? Well, this just happened actually 2 years ago. And the coach said, we lifted weights for an hour and a half, we wrestled for 2 hours, then we did sprints for an hour. And I said, well, that's a Gable workout? He said, isn't that a Gable workout? I said, well, if you're out for cross country, and Gable's coaching cross country. But he has this reputation, like it's either his intensity or his, maybe in technique. But, I never really feel like they really describe his coaching. And he has a unique ability. I just had the opportunity to bring my guys over to his house, and he coached them for about 45 minutes. I think that's why we took third, by the way. And anyway, he has the ability to connect real easy with, and he has a compassion as well. But listen, I think of a lot of stories about him from time to time. He get asked a lot of questions. I was actually asked to speak about him at a coaches convention this fall, but the things that I think about, I think it's when I went in there as a freshman, and I won the state title, and then I won the junior national title, and some of these guys started saying, well, you can start at Iowa as a true freshman, and I was thinking, really? And I think the first two people I grabbed a hold of was Chuck Yeagle. I know he's here, and you shoot in on Chuck's leg was like shooting in on that. Well, he didn't move, just me. It was like bounced off him. But then I remember also wrestling Gable from many times, I was a recipient of many arm bars. I remember one specific incident where I'm sitting there trying to bridge, like my 19th time, I'm bridging off the back, and I got my eyes closed, and I just happened to look up, and I realized he's not using any hands. Like, But anyway, one other story I think of quite often is after I got done wrestling, Coach Gable was kind of suggesting to stay and wrestle international, and I didn't quite think I was good enough. And Northwestern called and said, hey, we can get you in our MBA's program, we can pay you so much, et cetera, et cetera. And anyway, I talked to Coach Gable about it. He goes, "No, why don't you stay here? And I think it's the best place for you to train." So anyway, I stayed there, and anyway, one Saturday. So this is the year I think it was the 83, 84. My brother and I and a guy named Joe Melchiori got duck hunting early in the morning, like every good Iowa Rustler does, and we did this on an Iowa football weekend, and we ended up going out, coming back, and I had it timed just right. I knew exactly when it was going to be, but I ran into Iowa football traffic, and so we were 15 minutes late. Well, a coach named Jay was coaching at that time, Robinson, and he didn't particularly like that I was 15 minutes late, but I wasn't on the team. But anyway, he says, he takes his other two guys because you can't work out here anymore. I said, I can't work out here anymore, and I just turned down this Northwestern job. Well, anyway, I mean, if you know me, I'm kind of stubborn. Jay's kind of stubborn, and we kind of had a little, few words with each other. And then, anyway, I was just steaming about it all like, how's he going to kick me out of practice? I'm not even on the team. How can he kick me out? Going through that. I should have went to Northwestern. Well, anyway, about 8 o'clock at night, we get a knock on the door, and it's Coach Gable. And anyway, Coach here sits down, and he doesn't say much, and I kind of say something about that, and he goes, "Well, it's my fault." I said, "It's your fault?" And he goes, "Yeah, my fault." And I said, it could be my fault. It could, most likely, it's Robinson's, but it could be Robinson's fault. There's no way it's this guy's fault. So anyway, I remember you doing that. It touched me in a way that, like I just kind of melted there, and then, it got worked out. But anyway, it's a humble side of this guy. Chuck Yegla, thank you for, he was I don't know where he is, but I talked to him, earlier, but he, and we spent about a year or two wrestling with him. Incredible wrestler. He was on the 80 Olympic team. He's done fabulous things. But one thing, the seatbelt, I still teach the seatbelt. He was very good at. And, some other guys like Brad Smith. I still got ripped off. That's another thing I ripped off that Midlands match that freshman year. Remember? No. No, it was not. It's 8-6, and I had to. Anyway, all right, go with it. But anyway, these guys have been real instrumental. You get in there a freshman, you wrestle these type of guys, and you grow up real quick. But I'd like to also thank this group over here, mostly. I'll start with Maria over there. She's been a great. We're going to be married for 30 years, but she's kind of lived this wrestling life for that many years, and she's been a great supporter. She knows a lot about wrestling. She's hard to stomp on, but she's been great. Travels everywhere. She actually takes her time, takes days off, and flies out to watch CBU wrestle because she's come to like it so much. But I thank her very much for 30 years. Larry, I thank him. He doesn't get, like I said, he doesn't get a lot of support. But this guy, actually, a story about this guy, he's got an incredible headlock. And he actually, once we put him in the lineup, there was Eddie Bannock was hurt. They had to we needed somebody. They moved Larry up 2 weight classes. He ends up wrestling the future Big Ten champ or Big Ten finalist that Eddie would wrestle in the finals. He headlocked him 3 times and lost by 1. He was up a lot of weight. But actually, when I signed with Iowa promised to come up and send some guys to rough a freestyle tournament. And I either was in Larry's weight or I was in my brother's weight, Jim. Well, this time I was in Larry's weight, and I draw Larry the first round. I have an Iowa guy roughing, and there's a guy named John Marsh that used to be there at Iowa. But Larry, of course, goes out and headlocks me. And anyway, John Marks is yelling, "He's pinned! He's pinned!" Actually, and when I went to Iowa, the guy said, "Well, you were pinned. I just didn't want to call it." But I thank my sisters here, Chris, Diane, and Teresa. They've been big supporters. They're probably the toughest of all 3 of us, actually. But thanks for all the support. This whole group of people, when we were at the D2 Nationals just down in Cedar Rapids about 2 weeks ago, they all showed up and they had their CBU shirts out.